We start, as you mentioned, with the West Coast Eagles, and Cara, it's hard to remember them being lower than this since the infamous drug era.
No, that was probably their lowest point culturally and socially, but this, in a football sense, Craig, is much, much worse. And I think everyone remains shocked that not one, not two, not three, but seven players would so blatantly and flagrantly disobey the rules when they've been told that they can't go out. They're allowed to go out, and they were having a drink, and 7 of them decided to go out night clubbing. Some more of them caught COVID. The Eagles are so desperate they can't suspend them. They want to punish them, so they've been fined, and I reckon they've got off lightly, Kane. I think a suspended $2,500 fine and only $2,500 in total is pretty lenient given what the club is up against, and we just keep hearing that there is a disconnect between players and coach, between senior players and younger players. The club denies it. They scoffed at your comments about Elliot Yeo, but there is an investigation going on to not only their list management, but also their strength and conditioning, which has not been up to scratch.
Unsurprising that clearly the standards have slipped, as we've spoken about on this show before, which is the direct reflection of the coach. Now, I've heard your commentary around it. I don't think he is the man to rebuild this club because of the tenure that he's been there for and how long it is going to take, and there's not a lot coming through. So that's going to take a further 5 years. He's 9 years in. How do you see his future at the club? Trevor Nisbet said he's going nowhere.
Well, it's intriguing to hear David King talk. You almost feel as though he's actually talking to Adam Simpson. And it was David King, who was one of the old guard at North, who tried to get him back there a few years ago.
Well, just on that, David King and I on Friday on SEN had an argument. He said I was being too hard on Adam Simpson, and he said he was the man to rebuild the club. So he's turned in the space of 3 days. So I'll challenge...
He must be shocked by
I'll challenge him on that on Friday. So I was surprised at that. But you're right, their relationship is strong. So that's saying something.
Could the two of them have spoken, David King and Adam Simpson, since Friday? And the way David was so strong about a divorce and not coaching the West Coast Eagles, you just wonder whether Adam Simpson feels it's the biggest slap in the face you can get as a coach when you speak to them about behaviour. Boys, we're under the pump already. And 7 players go totally against what you asked for. You must sit back and go, is my message not being listened to anymore? It's
unbelievable to think that they've been playing top-ups. They haven't been able to field a team. They're under so much pressure. They've got so many senior players. I think there's been a relatively forgiving football world until now. I've understood some of the
shots we looked at, Craig, of that North Melbourne game. I mean, that was a great day for sport in a way. It was really heartwarming, and you felt that, you know, those blokes were going to be Eagles for life, and a good performance. And how they beat Collingwood is just completely beyond me. But
it's thumbing your nose at your club, at society, at the West Australian public, and what
after one of your worst performances ever. Because that Richmond, they were a bit better against Brisbane. That Richmond game was their lowest ebb of the season.
Kane was reminding me that it was only recently that Ollie Wines was being fined for doing reporter interviews.
I think he got a week for that, and the Crows were criticised for
face mask.
not wearing them.
Crowded. How could you...
Ben Hart was suspended for 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
I mean, it was very serious at the time, and it's all changed, I know, but it's extraordinary.
You mentioned David King. This was what he had to say on Adam Simpson today.
I think a major part of this is how the information reached Adam that there were 5 more. Did they come forward and see him? Were they called out? The lies after the lies, in the end, are what really hit home as to what your culture is. So 2, you sort of understand that there's going to be a percentage of error with 50 young men in your group. But 7, the percentage is a fraction higher. Does it impact his thought process as to whether to roll on through this rebuild process? Because a fair percentage of those 7 are going to be the players that are involved in the rebuild.
Again, when I was listening to that live, David talking about the way Adam Simpson found out, to hear there was another 5, the lies, it just had me thinking that former teammates, Adam Simpson maybe doesn't believe he's being treated very well by the players, and you start questioning yourself and the message, and how can players treat me like that? The players and coach relationship, Cara, has to be rock solid. And I feel like potentially...
Well, that was my point, Lord. I think little things have slipped at West Coast, and you can see that visibly, and then little things add up to big things. Now, this has created a big thing, but perhaps Adam needs to reflect, have I let little things build up to this, and have I been hard enough on a group that had clearly got ahead of themselves in some way?
And I go back again, older players... Younger players feeling the older guys are just too entitled, getting games that they're not earning and not deserving. Older players who perhaps some of whom should have been delisted.
See, it's a road out for them too, isn't it? It's not like a quick fix, like a
Well,
And it's not like-
they're not saying that though. Like they couldn't be any more definitive that he's the guy. Now,
privately, they're admitting that the list management area has to completely change. You can't blame COVID though. You cannot. That's been one of the causes, but certainly not the whole cause. Look at Freo over the weekend and how many players were actually missing from their side that performed, again, absolutely brilliantly, Matthew. It's just extraordinary what some clubs have been able to do.
They could not be more invested, the Dockers, in getting the results.
Lastly on COVID, I think we've almost seen the end of clubs declaring players in protocols, and that'll be illness from
well, why
now
are we
on,
testing, Hutchie? Why are we even testing? So Richmond say illness, other clubs have said illness, there's been a lot going around. Why are we still testing healthy
Richmond
players?
are insisting that Dion Prestia had the flu and that he'd had COVID
And
previously.
Probably right, but I think we're almost at the point where it'll be explained away differently, put it that way.